The 2024 Chicago White Sox were the worst team in MLB history, because while they were once thought of as a World Series contender in 2021, their young core has not been able to stay healthy. They haven't had any valuable reinforcements from their minor league system, and they've had deep-rooted leadership problems which stem from the front office and ownership neglecting to adapt to the fast-paced changes of the game. So how did a team that was on top of the baseball world just 20 years ago descend into the wrong side of history? Well, to truly understand, our story must start there. During the 2000s, the White Sox were rich with talent. They fielded Hall of Famers such as Frank Thomas and Jim Thome, as well as other all-star caliber players in Paul Konerko and Mark Burley. These guys helped lift the club to 3 postseason appearances, including a sweep over the Houston Astros in the 2005 World Series for their first championship since 1917. This ignited the fan base who had little to cheer for throughout the previous few decades. And during their parade celebration, 1.75 million fans attended. They were lined up under the metro, in the parks, and on bridges just to get a glimpse of their beloved White Sox hoisting the World Series trophy. And as they celebrated, it felt as though the club was finally ready to compete amongst baseball's best teams on a year-to-year basis. After all, their manager Ozzie Guillen emphatically stated during the ceremony that he was going to continue to bring winning baseball to Chicago. This was true to an extent. From 2006 to 2009, the club ranked 13th in terms of wins, averaging 82.5 per season, highlighted by a playoff berth in 08, but they were eventually knocked out by the Tampa Bay Rays in the ALDS. And after missing the playoffs entirely the following season, the club entered 2010 with eyes set on October baseball, something which looked likely as they entered the All-Star break off the heels of a 24-5 stretch, propelling them to a half-game advantage over the Tigers in the Central. Then just a month later, they promoted top prospect Chris Sale to help their chances even more. This was a significant moment as Sale had just been drafted in June and only threw 10 1/3 innings in the minors. But he was thrusted into big league action where he would go on to log an elite 1.93 ERA in 23 1/3 innings of work as a reliever, helping shore up the bullpen which only boasted 3 other arms with an ERA plus above 100. On top of this, deadline acquisition Edwin Jackson pitched well in his 11 starts down the stretch, and Andrew Jones magically became a baseball god again and tallied the 4th highest WRC plus during the final 2 months of the year. However, following a 2-12 stretch in mid-September, they missed out on the division by 6 games. It was a tough pill to swallow for the team, and although they had some promising young names such as Chris Sale, Gordon Beckham, and Dion Viciedo, their heartbreaking finish to the season foreshadowed the type of failure they would endure throughout the 2010s. During this time, the club finished 4th place or lower in the division 6 times and had the 3rd fewest amount of wins by averaging a mere 74.3 a season. This was due to many factors such as their inability to supply their major league squad with talent through the draft. From 2010 to 2019, they've received 72.2 total WAR from their selections, with their highlight being Chris Sale from their 2010 class. He went on to produce 30.1 WAR over the next 7 seasons, including a run of 5 straight top 5 Cy Young finishes before being shipped up to Boston. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is a digital safety and protection company that offers a variety of products and services to help protect your data and privacy. Did you know that in 2024, Americans have lost roughly $12.5 billion to online crimes, which is nearly triple the amount from 2020? Aura can help protect you from falling victim to this group. For example, after ordering an item online, I'm often met with messages like this one where they are trying to get me to click the link, which would allow them access to my accounts. But with Aura, they are able to block scam phone calls and text messages to keep your inbox safe. Additionally, just a few months ago, National Public Data announced they had suffered a major breach potentially impacting every American. The incident compromised over 2.9 billion records, including critical personal information such as full names, addresses, and most importantly, social security numbers. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/greenlight or click the link in the description to get a 2-week free trial. Other highlights from their drafts include guys such as Marcus Semien and Chris Bassett. The only problem was the organization gave up on them too early on in their careers. Semien was around a top 10 to 15 prospect in the Sox system and featured in 85 games between 2013 to 2014, where he went on to struggle at the plate, hitting a mere .240 with a .673 OPS. Bassett, on the other hand, enjoyed decent success from his first few starts in the bigs. But during the offseason leading up to 2015, the club decided to part ways with the pair by sending them to the Oakland Athletics in exchange for a rental starter in Jeff Samardzija. And during his lone season in Chicago, he led the league in many different categories, but for all the wrong reasons. In his 32 starts, he allowed the most hits, earned runs, homers, and pitched to the tune of a .496 ERA for a grand total of .3 WAR. And the two guys they gave up made them pay. Semien has consistently been ranked amongst the best field players in the sport. He led American League batters in WAR in 2023, set the MLB record for most home runs in a single season by a second baseman with 45, and just recently won the World Series as a member of the Texas Rangers. In total, he has accumulated 44.5 WAR after leaving Chicago, compared to the 1.4 he posted with them. He alone makes this trade a huge failure, but combine him with losing Bassett and it makes it a franchise-altering mistake. Since 2019, he has been a consistent and durable arm for a few different teams with a combined ERA plus of 117. In total, he has posted 15.4 WAR after leaving Chicago compared to .6 with them. This has gone down as one of the worst trades in recent MLB history, but surprisingly, it wasn't their worst. That title belongs to the deal they made just a couple years later on June 4th, 2016, when they acquired an ailing James Shields for a 17-year-old Fernando Tatis Jr. Now, it was impossible to predict that the scrawny teenager would become the superstar that he is today, but nonetheless, it was a significant error by the organization. These two trades significantly set the White Sox back, but what's even worse is the fact that they not only misvalued their younger players, they also made poor decisions regarding guys already established in the majors. Let me explain. With Jim Thome set to be a free agent at the end of the 2009 season, they traded him and let him sign for just $1.6 million with the Minnesota Twins that offseason, where he went on to terrorize the Sox on numerous occasions, such as his walk-off two-run homer during their contest in mid-August. This game marked one of many times he came through for the Twins, and in the end, he finished the season with a monstrous 1,039 OPS in 108 games, while the Sox elected to plug their DH spot with Adam Dunn, who signed a lucrative 4-year $56 million contract through the 2014 season. Throughout his tenure, he posted the lowest batting average in baseball at .201 and recorded by far the most strikeouts at 720. Thome was out of the league in 2012, but it still goes to show that they made the wrong decision to invest 4 years and all that money in an aging slugger with little positional value. Another poor decision they made was the one regarding John Danks and Mark Buehrle, both starters, both lefties, but Danks was the much younger arm while Buehrle already had 10,000 innings to his name. Ultimately, the club decided to extend Danks to a 5-year $56 million extension, with Buehrle heading to the Marlins for 4 years $58. Once again, the Sox picked the wrong player, with Buehrle continuing to be an effective innings eater, while Danks became an injury-riddled arm who posted just .6 WAR during his 5-year extension. But I want to give them some credit, because heading into the 2020s, it finally seemed as though they had a roster built for success. On the offensive side, Jose Abreu was aging like fine wine, coming off his fourth 30-homer 100 RBI season at 32 years old. Their former top prospect Yoan Moncada had finally broken out with 64 extra base hits and MVP votes for the first time in his career. Even Tim Anderson was turning into one of the game's most elite contact hitters, with his .335 average in 2019 helping him win the AL batting title. They were also able to attract some of the game's most intriguing players when they signed Eloy Jimenez for 6 years $43 million, Luis Robert Jr. for 6 years $50, and Yasmani Grandal for 4 years $73. These guys were set to be the main offensive weapons and on paper could compete with most lineups in the game, and on the pitching side they had equally intriguing arms. with the big three being starters Dylan Cease, Lucas Giolito, and Carlos Rodon. Because of this, there was immense excitement surrounding the ball club for the first time in over a decade, and despite 2020 being a shortened 60-game season, they proved they had the tools to become one of the best teams in baseball by winning 35 games. All they needed to do was continue to supply their already established core with the right pieces during free agency, something the fans were promised. Because the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, stated that the low payrolls throughout the late 2010s were because they were planning to spend big once they became competitive again. So during free agency, fans dreamt of George Springer helping solve their lackluster production out of right field. They looked towards all the available starters and saw many that could slide into the front of the rotation. But instead of the big money moves they were promised, the club once again shied away from spending and opted to go a different route. To fix their right field problem, they signed Adam Eaton to a one-year deal worth $8 million. This was a strange move as the club ranked bottom of the pack in terms of most offensive categories for right fielders in 2020. With his signing, it still didn't give them a much better outlook as he posted just a 79 OPS plus the year prior at 31 years old. But I digress, because they did make one A+ move that offseason by signing closer Liam Hendriks to a 3-year $54 million contract. For the rotation, they brought back Carlos Rodon on a 1-year $3 million deal and acquired veteran ace Lance Lynn with 1 year remaining on his deal. This gave the club a rotation of Lucas Giolito, Dylan Cease, Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn, and Carlos Rodon. At their best, these five could combine to be one of the top rotations in the game. Now all they needed was a leader to guide them towards success. However, the club decided to rehire 76-year-old Tony La Russa, a decision made solely because of his friendship with the owner. His hire came as a shock to most, as he hadn't managed a game since 2011, and baseball had evolved significantly in the decade that ensued. But I will say, despite their shaky offseason additions and questionable hiring of Tony La Russa, this team was built to win regardless of who was at the helms, and that's exactly what they did, in spite of many injuries. Before the season kicked off, Eloy Jimenez suffered a torn pectoral muscle while trying to rob a home run during a Cactus League game on March 31st. This was a big blow before opening day, but the Sox adopted a next man up mentality, which meant Yermin Mercedes was thrusted into an everyday role, and he took over baseball. It seemed like everything he touched turned to gold, and it culminated in him winning the AL Rookie of the Month award for April. And he wasn't the only one breaking out of nowhere. Carlos Rodon, who was a former top prospect in the Sox farm, had a difficult 2-year stretch leading into 2021 due to injuries, and was actually non-tender during the offseason. But he paid back every penny of his new deal when he tossed the 20th no-hitter in franchise history on April 14th. Coming just 2 batters shy of a perfecto when an errant slider hit Roberto Perez with 1 out in the 9th. He too enjoyed a great open to the season, allowing just 2 earned runs in 25 innings pitched through April, helping guide the club to a 14-11 record off the bat. Then the following month, their offense started to kick it into second gear with guys like Jose Abreu, Jake Lamb, and Yohan Moncada stepping up big time. But Yasmani Grandal's numbers catch my eye here, because during May, he posted the 3rd lowest batting average in baseball at 136. However, because he walked a ridiculous 29 times, his on-base percentage was the 2nd highest at 467. To me, this is one of the strangest months in baseball history, as he became just the 2nd player to ever record an average lower than 150 with an on-base percentage higher than 450 during a 20-game span, with the only other man to record this feat being Gene Tenace all the way back in 1977. They rode streaks like this till the trade deadline, where they sat 61-43, 9 games up for the division lead, meaning for the first time in over a decade, they were buyers and made 3 moves. A couple under-the-radar acquisitions in second baseman Cesar Hernandez and reliever Ryan Tepera, with the headliner being profound closer Craig Kimbrell from their crosstown rivals. He was brought in to create the best setup and closer partnership in baseball with Liam Hendriks. But it was actually Tepera who became the biggest deadline out of the 3 by posting a 2.50 ERA down the stretch. All in all, this team was able to comfortably take the division with 93 wins, and surprisingly, it was the pitching which helped carry them to the postseason, with the staff ranking 2nd in ERA in the American League. This isn't to discredit the offense, because each time a big name player went down, they always had someone to fill in and not lose too much production. Guys like Gavin Sheets, Adam Engel, and Jake Lamb carried the offense at points during the season when Jimenez, Grandal, and Robert all went down for extended periods of time. In fact, the offense never seemed to have all their players healthy at once, but heading into the postseason, that finally changed, and they were able to field their best possible lineup for their encounter with the Houston Astros in the ALDS. But instead of the high-scoring offense most anticipated with everyone healthy, they were held to just 1 run in 2 contests. And the pitching, which was dominant all year long, finally started to crack, allowing 31 runs in 4 games, meaning their magical season was over. All that was left to do was restock during the offseason and come back stronger than before, something which looked likely as they still had the majority of their core returning. But instead of supplying them with the necessary free agents, they instead made smaller additions like the year prior, such as signing reliever Kendall Graveman to a 3-year $24 million contract and trading Craig Kimbrell for AJ Pollock. This gave the club practically the exact same look as in 2021, minus Carlos Rodon to the Giants and minus Adam Eaton for Pollock. However, most analysts still pegged them to win the weak AL Central. That's why their end of season record of 81-81 was such a disappointment. It seemed like nothing could go their way all season long. On the offensive side, Jose Abreu was the only starter to play over 100 games and log at least a 100 OPS plus. Their pitching, which was a major strength the year prior, regressed mightily, this time ranking 8th in the AL. The reason behind their step back was simple: injuries. It's what almost caused their 2021 season to go wayward, but each time someone went down, there was always another player ready to fill in and keep up the quality, which meant Yasmani Grandal, Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, and Eloy Jimenez, all playing less than 100 games, killed any chance of their offense scoring as much as the year prior. And on top of this, Tony La Russa was seen falling asleep numerous times during games, misused the bullpen frequently, and even intentionally walked Trey Turner in a 1-2 count, only to face Max Muncy, who went on to hit a 3-run homer. But somehow the most embarrassing moment has to be when a fan was pleading for him to use a pinch runner, so he called time and did exactly what he said.
Oh, he's gonna pinch run. He's pitched, and he called it.
I don't want to be too harsh on the man because he is a 3-time World Series champion and Hall of Fame manager, but him stepping down after the 2022 season was a blessing for the Sox and allowed them to hire the manager they should have hired 2 years prior. That man ended up being Pedro Griffon, a first-time manager who possessed the skills to communicate bilingually, make data-driven plans, and become a respected leader in the clubhouse. And during his announcement press conference, he had some words to say.
Here's some of the things that you can expect from the 2023 White Sox. We will be fundamentally sound. We will play with passion, pride for this uniform. This means something.
Now Hosey and Anderson square off. They're fighting. They're swinging. Down goes Anderson.
We will respect the game, our fans, and earn their trust.
The Sox lost 20 in a row. They've not won all year on a Monday.
We will be prepared to control the strike zone on both sides of the ball.
And he walked him, and it's 4-2.
And he went around. He got him.
We will work hard and play winning baseball every night.
The losing streak is now 21 games.
I truly see great things happening here, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
These words did not end up ringing true, with the Sox playing like a AAA team throughout the majority of the year, and forced them to sell longtime players Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez to the Angels, as well as Kendall Graveman to the Astros. Their season continued to get worse just a couple weeks later when Jose Ramirez landed one of the cleanest punches we've seen in quite some time on Tim Anderson, a moment which perfectly encapsulated their season. But as much as I sit here and try to relate to the misery White Sox fans felt in 2023, let's instead listen to an actual fan who had this to say during a Chicago sports radio broadcast.
I've been a diehard Chicago White Sox fan for nearly 40 years. Don't get me wrong, I'm angry, but it is a byproduct of a dysfunctional, abusive relationship with the front office and the ownership of the Chicago White Sox. I didn't understand the La Russa hire, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt. The vast majority of the prospects have been busts. The product on the field is pathetic. You'd think that would be enough to wake this organization up. But yesterday, Kenny Williams had the gall to say that he's not in a good place right now, and accountability is not an issue. You're right, he's not in a good place. He's not in a job he should have.
His words about the mismanagement of the organization was finally heard by owner Jerry Reinsdorf, and he got his wish on August 22nd when general manager Rick Hahn and executive vice president Ken Williams were fired, opening the door for their assistant GM Chris Getz to take full control of their front office. And during his first meeting that offseason, he had some words to say regarding the state of the franchise.
We've got a talented group, there's no question. I don't like our team. And we've got to make some adjustments so we improve for 2024. It's not a well-rounded club right now, and so we've got to find players to come in here to help get us in the right direction.
It's refreshing to hear those words from a new play caller in the Sox's front office, because Hahn had been with the club since 1992 and Williams since 2000, a time when they did win the World Series, but practically every other year ended in misery. That's why change had to be made, and Getz promised better days were to come. But the opening few weeks of the 2024 season proved nothing was going to change. On March 31st, Eloy Jimenez left the game with left adductor soreness. On April 5th, Luis Robert suffered a right hip flexor strain. And just a few days later on the 9th, Yoan Moncada suffered a left adductor strain. These three guys were the backbones of the White Sox lineup, and their injury-riddled start to the season wiped away any chance of a resurgence from the offense. But I will give them credit, because after a dismal 3-22 start to the season, they bounced back and swept the Tampa Bay Rays, with the highlight being Eric Fedde's pitching performance in Game 3, as he went 8 1/3 innings, allowing just 2 runs and striking out 9 batters. Fedde was one of the first signings under the new front office, and his 2-year $15 million contract proved to be a bargain, as he posted 5.6 WAR, which ranks 6th best in the majors. He was traded to the St. Louis Cardinals at the deadline. And somehow, despite moving Tommy Pham, Michael Kopech, and Fedde, they only net the club 2 prospects who rank respectively 13th and 14th in their top 30 list. They also received Miguel Vargas in the deal, who was not happy he went from the World Series contending LA Dodgers to the potential worst team in MLB history. It also didn't help that the club was in the midst of a historically bad losing streak, which capped off at 21 losses spanning from July 6th all the way to August 5th, coming just 2 losses shy of tying the all-time record held by the Phillies from 1961. Breaking this streak was the last contribution manager Pedro Griffon did in a Sox uniform, as he was fired just a few days later. In total, during his tenure with them, he led the club to 89 wins and 190 losses for a winning percentage of .319. Among 391 managers to oversee as many games as he did, his winning percentage ranks as the 3rd worst. And along with him, bench coach Charlie Montoyo, third base coach Eddie Rodriguez, and assistant hitting coach Mike Tozer were also let go, with the club naming former MLB All-Star Grady Sizemore interim manager for the rest of 2024. But this wouldn't go on to change much. Just a week later, they were eliminated from playoff contention at 30-94, needing 27 more losses out of 38 to record the most in modern MLB history, something they were trying their absolute best to avoid. And after falling to 31-109, they started to turn things around by winning 5 of their next 11. They also rode a 3-game sweep over the Angels into the final series of the season against the Detroit Tigers. This was it. At 39-120, they needed to sweep them to avoid reaching the fabled 121 losses, or drop 1 game and history would be theirs. It was going to be a tough battle till the end, and the Sox would not give up. They started their ace Garrett Crochet, who had been one of the few bright spots on the team, and rode him through 4 scoreless innings. They even answered back in the top of the 6th with a Zach DeLoach solo homer to cut the Tigers' deficit in half. But after another 2-run inning for the Tigers in the 7th, they were able to comfortably cruise past the Sox with a 4-1 victory. History was theirs, 121 losses, officially surpassing the 1960 Mets. And to make matters worse, on the day they accomplished this feat, their division rivals were able to clinch an improbable postseason berth. And because of their historically awful season, their owner had some words to say. To White Sox fans, by all measures, our on-field performance this season was a failure. As a leader of this organization, that is my ultimate responsibility. There are no excuses. It was a long, painful season for us all. We recognize on a daily basis that it is our responsibility to earn your trust, attention, time, and support. We vow to take that approach daily as we put in the work this off-season to be better, and I commit to you that everyone associated with the White Sox is focused on returning this organization to the level of success we all expect and desire. As with the letter John Fisher sent out regarding the Athletics' relocation, it's hard to trust these words from the Sox's owner. It's been years and years of continuous mismanagement, and writing a letter won't help bring back the trust of the fans. At the very least, say it with chest on camera or in front of your supporters, because a letter is only depicted as a cop-out and a way to get past dealing with failure. Also, it's especially hard to trust his words when a former Marlins front office executive shared this bit of information.
You know, Jerry Reinsdorf, when I first got into baseball, I've never told this story before. He sat me down. I was 32 years old, just in baseball for my first of 18 years. And he said, you know what? Finish in second place every single year. Because your fans will say, wow, we've got a shot. We're in it. But there's always the carrot left. There's always one more step to take.
Reinsdorf has gone on record to deny ever saying this, but with the way the White Sox have been handled the past couple decades, it wouldn't be surprising if these words are actually truthful. But regardless, it was a fast fall from grace for the White Sox, who most anticipated were at the beginning of a sustained period of success entering 2021. So what happened, and how did they go from division winners to the worst team in MLB history in just 3 years? Well, it stems from many different reasons, one of them being their inability to draft impactful players. As mentioned earlier in the video, they struggled during the 2010s, and that trend has continued throughout the previous few years. Their third overall pick from 2019, Andrew Vaughn, has never amounted to much success since making his debut in 2021. In fact, they have only had one player in the last 10 drafts to post at least 2 WAR in a single season, and that man is Garrett Crochet, who is one of the few elite players on the 2024 team with a 3.58 ERA in almost 150 innings. But his name has been surrounded with trade talk, and it's a safe bet that he will be dealt this offseason alongside Luis Robert. Another problem the club has faced has stemmed from issues revolving leadership. It's something that has been apparent within the organization, as most fans and players haven't been too keen on the decisions the front office and ownership have made. One example is their decision to hire Tony La Russa, despite having many more qualified candidates, ones that would be able to handle the up-and-coming Sox stars during this new era of baseball. Look no further than his decision to scold Yermin Mercedes for hitting a home run on a 3-0 count when the game was out of reach. All you need to do to understand my opinion on this matter is to look at my channel name. And while you're at it, if you don't mind hitting the subscribe button, that would be greatly appreciated. But back to it. La Russa talking down to Yermin for his home run is the most glaringly obvious reason why he was not the right choice for this team. And coincidence or not, after he was told off by La Russa, his numbers dropped from a 364 average and 984 OPS to just a 162 average and 443 OPS in 32 games. Their shortage of leadership also came from the lack of a veteran presence in the clubhouse. Because for the longest time, that man was Jose Abreu. He had been through the thick of the rebuild, with his time in Chicago beginning all the way back in 2014. And during his 9-year stay with the club, he posted the 9th most home runs in the league at 243, the 12th best OPS plus at 135, and 2nd most games at 1,270. He even won the MVP award during the shortened 2020 season. He was the voice in the clubhouse that got people to listen. Yohan Moncada shared, "He taught us to never put your head down, no matter what, the good moments, the bad moments, just keep working hard, try to go out and do your best." Lucas Giolito mentioned, "He was so amazing to all the people around him. When I first got traded over, it was spring training in 2017. He was totally welcoming. It's not like he had to say or do anything, but he was like the embodiment of the culture here, the team, all that kind of stuff." When Abreu left for the Astros in 2023, he left behind a leadership role that was never taken by anyone else. So as the franchise enters this new era, you could call it, there is a lot of work that needs to be done to right their wrongs from years and years of mismanagement, poor decision making, and the hurt they have caused their fan base, whose only desire is to cheer on their beloved Chicago White Sox, a name now synonymous with baseball history, but for all the wrong reasons.